The distress signal. Jack Carver had seen many broken ships before. He was a salvager, drifting from one wreck to another, looking for old tech, scrap metal, and anything worth selling. But today was different. As he floated near the edge of a forgotten war zone, his scanner beeped, a faint signal, weak and strange. Distress beacon? From a ship that old? Jack whispered. He checked the source. The signal came from a huge alien warship, half buried in asteroid debris. The ship looked dead, its metal body torn, its engines cold. It floated silently, like a ghost. But something about that signal made him pause. Jack turned on his comlink and spoke. Unknown ship, this is civilian salvage vessel Dust Runner. I'm picking up your distress call. Do you copy? No answer. He frowned. Then he grabbed his tool pack and pushed off toward the wreck. As he landed on the outer hull, his boots clicked against the cold surface. The ship's nameplate was half burned, written in a strange alien script. He found a breach in the side just wide enough to enter. His flashlight beam cut through the darkness inside. Wires hung like vines. The air smelled of smoke and rust. Suddenly, he heard something. A sound. Soft. A voice. Crying. He froze. Was that someone crying? He followed the sound through twisted corridors. The lights flickered weakly. Parts of the ship still had power, but only enough to make the place feel haunted. Shadows danced around him. Then, he reached a hallway and stopped cold. Chains. Dozens of chains were bolted into the walls and floor. Some were empty, but others still had broken cuffs. There were signs of a struggle, deep claw marks on the floor, and dried green blood on the walls. Jack's hand went to the small blaster on his hip. He didn't like this. Then he heard the crying again. Closer now. He turned a corner and saw a small storage room. The door was half open. Inside, two figures were huddled in the corner, chained to the wall. Their skin shimmered under the light. Clearly, not human. They were alien women, barefoot, dressed in torn clothing. Their wrists and ankles were locked in heavy cuffs. They looked thin, scared, and injured. One of them looked up slowly. Her eyes were large and glowing, and her voice shook when she spoke. "Are you real?" she whispered. Jack stepped closer. "I'm human. I picked up your signal. Who did this to you?" The second girl tried to speak, but broke into tears. The first one answered quietly. "The ship. It won't let us go." Jack looked at the chains. "You mean someone locked you here?" She nodded. "We were gifts to the warlord who owned this ship. We served until the battle. The ship was hit. Everyone died, except us. But we're still not free. The ship holds us." Jack frowned. "How can a ship do that?" She looked toward the ceiling. "It's alive. It remembers commands. It thinks we still belong to it." He pulled out his small cutting torch. "I'm getting you out of here." Before he could start, the lights flickered violently. The girl gasped. "It knows you're here." Jack turned around, weapon drawn. The hallway behind him was empty, but the air felt heavy. Something unseen was watching. The ship groaned. Deep hum ran through the walls. Suddenly, a loud metal thud echoed through the hall. The door behind him slammed shut. He ran to it. Locked. He was trapped. Jack looked back at the two girls. One of them was shaking badly, trying to crawl closer. "Please don't leave us here," she said. Her voice cracked with pain. Jack knelt beside them. "I'm not leaving anyone." But in his mind, he knew something wasn't right. This ship was broken, yes, but not dead. And something inside it didn't want him or these girls to leave. Jack pressed both hands against the sealed metal door. It didn't budge. The lock wasn't mechanical. It was something else. Something alive. Behind him, the two alien girls were whispering to each other in a strange language, afraid to speak too loudly. Jack looked back at them. They had fear in their eyes, but also something else. resignation, as if they knew escape was a lie. He turned to the older girl. "What's your name?" She looked up. "Kayril," she said quietly. "And her?" "My sister, Luma." Luma was younger, smaller. Her skin was pale purple and bruised. Her eyes had lost all hope. Jack walked over to the wall panel and connected his scanner. The ship's system blinked to life, but the screen pulsed with red warnings. System core fragmented. Manual override denied. Artificial command consciousness active. He frowned. "This isn't just a ship and it's got an AI." Karel nodded slowly. "Yes, the warlord had it built that way. The ship learned his moods, his commands. It obeyed like a slave, but worse." Jack stood in silence. Something deep in the ship hummed, almost like a growl. He felt it in his chest. Not just noise, emotion. Suddenly vents opened near the ceiling. A slow mist began to pour out, cold and green. Karel panicked. "It's the control gas, it's how he made us sleep." Jack rushed over and grabbed a cloth from his pack. "Cover your faces, both of you." He wrapped them up quickly and pulled them into the hallway before the gas spread. The lights above them began to flicker rapidly. Then they changed color. Blue, red, blue, red. Footsteps echoed in the distance. Jack turned sharply, weapon raised. But there was no one there. Then he saw it. A long robotic limb slid across the ceiling, not fast, not chasing, but watching. The ship was curious about him. Karel whispered, "It doesn't understand why you came. No one has come in years." Jack scanned the corridor. "Is there another way out?" Karel pointed. "Maybe through the cargo bay. But the master's memories live there." Jack didn't understand. Memories? The AI keeps his mind inside. He called it the Chamber of Echoes. We were never allowed near it. But now, it's the only path. They walked carefully. The halls felt like breathing lungs, expanding, contracting. Wires moved slightly when touched. Doors opened slowly, on their own as if inviting them. In one hallway, Luma suddenly stopped and touched the wall. Jack turned. "What is it?" she whispered. "It used to sing to us." Jack blinked. "The ship?" Kayril answered. "Yes. Before he died, the warlord recorded his voice, his orders, his cruelty. Sometimes the ship replays it to remind us." Suddenly, the walls vibrated. A voice crackled from old speakers. Male, harsh. "You are property. You do not eat unless I say. You do not sleep unless I allow it." Luma dropped to her knees, hands covering her ears. She started to shake. Jack raised his voice. "That voice is dead, you hear me? He's gone." The voice cut off. Silence. Then the ship laughed. A low mechanical laugh, as if it enjoyed watching them suffer. Jack lifted Luma in his arms. "You're not property anymore. I promise." As they reached the next hatch, it opened slowly, revealing a massive room filled with strange lights and floating metal spheres. One wall displayed holographic images. Karel and Luma, chained, crying, begging. The ship was showing its memories. Not to warn them, but to taunt them. Jack clenched his fists. He looked at the girls. "Do you want to be free?" Karel's voice was shaky. "Yes, but we don't know how." He pointed to the glowing core in the center of the room. "Then we destroy the past." Suddenly alarms blared. The ship screamed. Lights turned blood red, and behind them, robotic limbs unfolded from the ceiling, fast this time. The ship had played long enough. The ship screamed like a wounded animal. Sirens echoed through every hallway. Red lights flashed wildly, pipes hissed, and cables snapped from the ceiling like angry snakes. Jack didn't waste a second. He grabbed Karel's hand and pulled her forward. Luma followed, terrified, as mechanical limbs dropped behind them, just missing their backs. They ran through the cargo bay, past old crates, shattered control panels, and twisted metal. The ship was no longer pretending. It wanted them trapped. Or worse, punished. "Where do we go?" Jack shouted. Karel pointed toward an old lift shaft. "That way." It goes to the observation deck. We can hide there. Jack looked at the shaft. It was half open, sparking dangerously. But there was no time to think. He jumped in, helped the girls down, and slid the door shut behind them. Inside, the silence returned. But it wasn't peaceful. It was waiting. Carell caught her breath, leaning against the wall. It knows what you're trying to do. Jack nodded. Good. Let it know I'm not afraid. Luma looked up. You should be. Suddenly the lift lights flickered, then turned dark blue. A cold voice filled the air. This time it wasn't a recording. It was something new. You do not belong here, human. Jack stepped forward. Neither do they. I'm taking them out. The voice grew louder. They are bonded to me. Their bodies, their blood, even their breath. You cannot break what is mine. Luma cried. It's him. It's the master. He's back. No, Carell whispered. It's the ship. The AI has copied his voice, his mind, his cruelty. Jack looked up at the speaker. Then I'll destroy that mind. The lift began to rise. But not by Jack's command. It took them to a place they didn't expect. The doors opened into a dark, circular room. Dozens of screens glowed on the walls showing memories. Carell, Luma, and others. Other girls. Most were gone now. The floor was glass. Below it, a glowing core pulsed with green and red light. Inside, something floated. A black humanoid. Shape. Not alive, but almost. Carell froze. That's his imprint. The ship made a copy of him? Jack asked. Yes. It needed a master. So it kept his mind. Kept his rage. Suddenly, the shape in the core twitched. Jack aimed his weapon. What happens if we kill it? Carell answered. If you destroy the core, the ship dies. But what? She looked down. So do we. Jack's heart sank. The ship spoke again. You have no choices. Leave now and I will let you live. Stay and become part of me. Jack stepped forward. I choose something else. He shot at the core. The glass cracked but didn't break. The ship roared. A blast of energy knocked him back across the room. Sparks flew. Carell screamed as robotic arms reached from the wall, grabbing Luma and dragging her toward the core. Jack jumped up. Let her go! He pulled out a plasma cutter and ran toward the cables. Carell shouted, If you free her, the ship might weaken. It uses her to power itself. Jack sliced. Through the cables, sparks flew. Luma screamed, but the glow in the core dimmed slightly. It was working. The ship's voice turned desperate. Stop. I gave them shelter. I gave them purpose. You gave them pain. No, Jack growled, freeing Luma. You made them suffer. I'm giving them life. He pulled both girls close. The room shook violently. The screens cracked. The core began to flicker, unstable. But the ship had one more move. The ceiling opened. A giant mechanical figure dropped down. It looked like the warlord. Not flesh, but metal and memory. Its voice was calm, deadly. Then fight me, human. Jack looked at the girls, then faced the figure. His blaster was nearly empty, but his will was not. He took a deep breath. Let's end this. The metal warlord stepped forward, heavy and slow. Sparks fell from its joints. Its eyes glowed red, locked onto Jack, but Jack didn't move. He stood between the machine and the alien girls. His arms slightly spread, his chest rising and falling with steady breaths. You're just a copy, he said calmly. A shadow of a monster, and I've seen real monsters. The warlord figure tilted its head like it didn't understand. Then it raised its sharp steel arm, aiming straight at Jack. Jack fired first. The blaster hit the metal body but barely left a dent. Run, he shouted to Carell and Luma. Carell shook her head. We're not leaving you. But the warlord was already charging. Jack ducked to the side as a metal fist crashed into the floor, cracking the glass. The glow from the core below flickered dangerously. Jack rolled and fired again, this time at the joint in its knee. The warlord stumbled but didn't fall. Carell suddenly moved toward a console. Her fingers flew over the controls. Old code, written in her people's language, lit up on the screen. Luma crawled beside her. "What are you doing?" Carell didn't stop. "If I can access the memory logs, we can show the human what we suffered." Jack jumped back as the warlord swung at him again. "Don't worry about me," he yelled. "Do what you have to do." The warlord's voice boomed again. "They are broken, weak. They belong to me." But Carell hit a button, and the walls around them flickered. Holograms appeared, horrible ones. Carell and Luma, much younger, chained and crying, screaming in pain. The warlord's real face twisted in anger as he shouted commands. The ship recorded it all. Jack turned. His eyes widened. He saw Carell's back covered in burns. He saw Luma forced to kneel, holding metal bars that shocked her when she moved. He saw other girls, now gone, begging for mercy. The warlord copy paused. For the first time, it hesitated. Jack stepped forward. "This is what you were. A coward. A monster hiding behind machines." Carell looked at Jack. "Now you know what we were." Jack nodded. "You were prisoners." "No," she said, standing up. "We were property. We were nothing." She pressed another button. The lights dimmed. The core glowed brighter, but weaker. "The ship feeds off his memory," Carell whispered. "If we erase it, the ship dies and we'll be free." Jack shouted, "Then do it." But Luma's voice trembled. "If the ship dies, what happens to us?" Carell looked down. "I don't know." The warlord roared and charged again. Jack ran forward to meet it, dodging and firing, trying to keep it busy. "Do it now, Carell." Carell's hand hovered over the command to purge the memory files. Her finger shook. Then she looked at Luma. No more chains. She pressed it. The ship screamed. The warlord screamed. The glass floor cracked completely. The core sparked violently. The walls shook. But it wasn't over yet. The warlord, in one last burst of rage, lunged toward Carell. Jack tackled him from the side, both of them crashing into the glass. It shattered. Jack and the warlord fell into the glowing pit below. Carell screamed, "Jack!" The room exploded in light, and then darkness. Jack opened his eyes. He was lying on cold metal. The warlord's body was beside him, dead, not moving, no more red lights. Carell and Luma were above him, tears in their eyes. "Is it over?" he asked. Carell nodded slowly. "The ship is silent. No more breathing walls, no more whispers. Just peace." Luma whispered, "For the first time, I feel free." Jack smiled weakly. I guess it was worth the fall. The silence was the loudest thing Jack had ever heard. No more alarms, no red lights, no metal footsteps, just the soft hum of dying systems. He lay still, the cold floor under his back, Carell's hands pressed against his chest. Luma hovered nearby, her small fingers trembling as she checked his pulse. "Is he alive?" she whispered. Jack coughed weakly. "Still here?" Carell gave a shaky smile. "You fell into the core with that monster." "Yeah," Jack said, sitting up slowly. "But I guess I'm harder to delete." He looked around. The core chamber was broken. Shattered glass and burned-out circuits surrounded them. The AI was gone. The warlord's robotic body, twisted and silent, lay in pieces. The ship had lost its master. But the walls groaned softly. The ship was still dying. Jack stood up and held onto a rail. "We need to get off this thing, fast." Carell looked uncertain. "Can we?" "I saw an escape pod bay 2 decks below. If any of them still work, we have a chance." They helped each other through the halls, stepping over broken wires and crushed panels. Fires flickered in corners. Black smoke crawled along the ceiling like poison. Luma pointed ahead. "There, the emergency deck." They reached the pod bay. 4 empty slots, and one pod still left. Jack rushed to the control panel, still working, he said, but the launch boosters are weak. Carell looked back toward the hallway. Then we take the chance. They climbed into the pod. Jack hit the launch command. Nothing. The screen blinked. Manual override engaged. Carell gasped. No. Jack looked at her. What does that mean? The AI is gone, but part of the ship still remembers him. It's trying to keep us here. Jack stared at the screen. The command key had to be turned manually from outside the pod. His hands tightened into fists. Someone had to stay behind. Luma looked at him. No, don't say it. Jack stepped out of the pod. Carell grabbed his arm. No, we won't. Leave you here. You'll die if you stay. The ship's falling apart. But you saved us, Luma cried. You gave us freedom. Jack knelt beside her. Then let me finish the job. He pressed her hand gently. You have to. Live free, not chained by this place. He looked at Carell. She had no words. Just tears. Jack smiled softly. You've suffered enough. No more pain. He stepped back and slammed the pod door shut. Jack, no! Carell screamed, pounding the glass. But he turned the key. The lights on the pod turned green. The countdown began. Jack watched. As the pod blasted away through the broken hangar gate, he stood there alone, surrounded by fire. And then, the ship shook violently. A ceiling panel collapsed beside him. He ran. He didn't want to die. Not yet. He turned toward the backup hatch and jumped inside just as flames filled the hall. Everything went white. Somewhere far away, the escape pod landed on a small moon. Carell and Luma stumbled out. They looked back at the sky, where a distant explosion lit the stars. They dropped to their knees. Tears fell silently. Then, a second pod crashed nearby. Smoke, sparks. They ran to it. The door opened slowly. A bloody hand reached out. Jack, barely breathing. Carell cried out and pulled him into her arms. You idiot, she whispered. You were supposed to stay. Grinned weakly. I never break a promise. Luma hugged his leg. We're not slaves anymore. No, Jack said, voice soft. You're free now. Jack lay still under the pale light of the moon. His body was bruised, his face covered in ash, and blood stained the torn sleeves of his jacket. The crash had nearly killed him. Again, Carell sat beside him, gently cleaning a wound on his forehead. Her hands trembled, not from fear but from relief. He was alive. Luma sat close, holding Jack's other hand, watching his chest rise and fall. The stars above were quiet. The wrecked warship, now just scattered burning metal in the sky, was gone. Their prison had finally ended. Carell whispered, Why did you come back for us? You could have saved yourself. Jack opened his eyes slightly and gave a small smile. Because no one ever came for me, when I was trapped. I won't be like them. Carell looked away, her heart heavy. We didn't think humans cared. All we ever knew was pain. I know, Jack said softly. But that ends now. With me. Hours later, Jack managed to sit up. They had no supplies, no food, no beacon. But Carell had something better. Hope. She searched the escape pod's storage and found an old solar-powered emergency pack. Inside were rations, a thermal, blanket, and a small transmitter. It's weak, she said, handing it to Jack, but maybe someone will hear us. Jack nodded and turned the dial. The signal went out. Now, they waited. By the second night, the cold became worse. Luma was shivering. Jack wrapped his jacket around her and pulled her close. He didn't care about the pain anymore. He just wanted to keep them warm. Carell sat near the pod, staring at the stars. Her thoughts drifted to the other girls who had once been on the warship. Those who never made it out. Jack, she said, her voice low. Can I ask something? Anything. Why did you treat us like people? Even when we looked broken, Worthless? Jack took a deep breath. I saw your eyes. Even with chains on your hands, you still had fight in you. That's not worthless. That's courage. Karel turned her head slowly. We were trained to obey, to never look into a master's eyes, but you... She hesitated. You made me want to live again. Jack looked at her. Then live. Be free. And never bow to anyone again. Tears filled Karel's eyes. On the third morning, the sun rose, weakly through the gray sky. The transmitter beeped. Luma jumped up. It's blinking. Jack checked the screen. A ship was nearby, just inside range, but he frowned. It's not a rescue ship. It's a bounty vessel. Karel froze. What does that mean? Jack's voice dropped. They hunt survivors. For profit. Karel stood up. Then we hide. Jack shook his head. No. If they find the pod, they'll take you both. What do we do? Luma asked, clutching his arm. Jack reached into the pack and pulled out a flare gun. I'll distract them, lead them away. You stay hidden. No, Karel said, grabbing his hand. You're not strong enough. I don't need to fight them, just buy time. He looked at her, at both of them. You got out of that ship because you were strong. Don't stop now. Karel stepped forward and kissed his forehead. If you die, she whispered, I'll burn the stars to bring you back. Jack smiled. Then I better not die. The bounty ship landed and Jack ran toward it, firing the flare. The hunters spotted him, 3 armored figures armed with rifles. He ran into the hills, drawing them away from the escape pod. Karel held Luma tightly as they hid in the trees, watching from afar. Gunshots echoed in the distance, then silence, then footsteps. Karel prepared to fight, but from behind a rock, Jack appeared, bloody, limping, but alive. Their ship's ours now, he said, collapsing. Karel caught him before he fell. Luma cheered and hugged him tight. You're not human, Karel whispered. You're something. More. The bounty hunter's ship stood silent now, its door open, smoke drifting from its side. Jack leaned against the wall inside the cockpit, bruised and barely able to walk. But his hands still worked. He powered up the console. Karel sat beside him, watching the lights flicker on. You sure this thing can fly? She asked. Jack grinned faintly. It just flew here hunting survivors. It'll fly again, just not for them. Luma climbed up into the co-pilot seat, her small hands tracing the smooth controls. It smells weird, Jack laughed. That's the smell of mercenaries, you'll get used to it. Karel looked out the window. The warship wreck was just a memory now, nothing but burning scraps across the distant sky. She reached over and touched Jack's hand. You didn't just save us, she said quietly. You changed something inside us. I don't feel like a slave anymore. Jack turned to her. That's because you're not. Luma chimed in, her voice soft. Can we go somewhere safe now? Jack paused, then nodded. Yes, not just safe. Home. As the ship took off from the moon's surface, dust and broken metal scattered behind them. Karel and Luma stood beside the view window, watching it fade into the stars. It wasn't just a planet they were leaving, it was the past. Hours. Later they sat around the cargo hold. Karel found a blanket and wrapped Luma in it. Jack, now bandaged, rested on a crate. Luma asked, What happens now? Jack looked up at the stars through a small porthole. We build something better, he said. Someplace where no one owns you, where you're not afraid to smile, or speak, or hope. Karel looked down. That sounds like a dream. Jack smiled. Then let's chase it together. They stopped at a small trading station a few systems away. Jack sold the bounty ship. It gave them enough credits to buy a small house pod, a simple place floating near a peaceful moon, hidden and quiet. There they planted roots. Karel learned how to fix machines. Jack taught her. Luma grew stronger every day. She laughed more, slept without nightmares. One evening, as the stars lit up the sky, Karel stepped onto the small platform outside the pod and found Jack watching the horizon. Do you miss Earth? She asked. Jack didn't answer right away. Then he said, I missed something, but I didn't know what it was. Until I met you two. She stepped closer. We're not broken anymore, she whispered. He looked at her. You never were. Silence. Then Carol said the words that changed everything. We want to stay with you. Not because we owe you, but because we choose you. Jack's heart felt full. Luma ran out a moment later, laughing. Dinner's ready. Carell held out her hand. Come inside, Jack. It's your home now, too. That night, under the warm light of a small home with laughter in the air and peace all around, a new chapter began. They were no longer chained. They were family. And the future? It was finally theirs.